Olympia, which was done by Manet, and he completed this work in 1863. Actually didn't debut until 1865 in the Paris Salon.
So why was Olympia so hated by the critics and the public?
And one famous critic, Victor de Jacquevitz, wrote that the expression of Olympia's face is that of being prematurely aged and vicious. The body's putrefying color recalls the horror of the morgue. So people were not kind at all about, her skin tone and the fact that she was so predominant in this painting.
Something else about this that
Well,
people hated.
The scandal in it that shocked people in Paris at the time was the fact that this was not a normal woman. She was actually a courtesan or a prostitute.
So the fact that she's naked is completely provocative and sexual.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Or is she nude?
Yeah, or is she artistically nude? Is she just sitting down for the great artist, Manet?
And that was one of the many topics that came up, this question of nude or naked. Nudes in the past had been portrayed obviously by goddesses or biblical figures. Venus of Urbino, done by Titan, and Sleeping Venus, done by Georgian, and they were portrayed as these perfect, ideal women. And Olympia is not that, perfect woman. She's a human woman, and the fact that she's portrayed, in this self-awareness of nudity makes her naked. Figures in the past that had been naked, for example, such as Adam and Eve in Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, as soon as they became aware of their own nudity, they became naked.
Throughout history and from the religious point of view, we're not supposed to look at women like this. We're not supposed to see women naked like this.
Women were very much sheltered, very outcasts in their own society. Nudes in the past were done very tastefully, still in a sense for the viewing of men, but done in a way that they were unaware of their own nakedness. So they were very innocent in that way.
Right.
While Olympia is aware of her nakedness and knowing her profession, she's not an innocent.
Is the fact that she's a prostitute, is that a known fact, or are we making that inference from the flower that she might be getting from, I think, one of her clients, and maybe the symbolic meaning of the cat that's at the foot of her bed?
It is very aware, and she's very well known, possibly very well known to many of the men that are in the room viewing her at the time. She was probably the lover of many men that were viewing her painting at the time. And so it turns around this sense of shame that she's supposed to embody, and it turns it around on them. And I think that was, the violent reaction that they had towards this painting.
Actually, because they felt uncomfortable seeing their lover in display like this, that they did at this painting to be untasteful and provocative.
And yet this painting was painted by Matisse, Manet, and he's a man, and who is she staring at? Is she staring at us as women? I don't think so. I think she's staring at men.
Throughout our history, naked women were usually goddesses, or they were married women. There wasn't just a young single prostitute. It's been depicted in a naked way, and I think that adds to just her fame.
Here we have Matisse's The Red Studio, which is done in 1911, and it's an oil on canvas. So this is an abstracted still life of Matisse's personal studio in the suburbs of Paris. Since Manet, artists have been trying to undermine the illusion of space. And as a viewer, our minds automatically are trained to see 3D space. So here we are able to construct walls, ceiling, and the floor from flat planes of red.
Yeah, automatically what I notice in this painting is the fact that red is the predominant color. It's all over the room. So why would Matisse decide to construct a room purely out of this one color?
Well, in Paris at the time, artists like Matisse and Picasso were continuing the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist experimentation and innovation in seeing the new potential in form, color, shape, and subject. And he uses this bold and unnatural manipulation of the color red to shape the room and the objects in it. He wanted to separate art from reality and instead emphasized the beauty and abstract ideas. And he really got that concept from studying under the great painter Gustave Moreau. This is one of his paintings. Although the color here is very strong, the studio seems somewhat spacey, as the walls and floors are this vibrant red, but the furniture seems almost invisible. The paintings here really get the most attention. This is because they're actually paintings that he has done. These are his paintings, and so he really wanted them to be the main focus and to stand out, and so he painted them in these bright, vibrant colors.
If separating art from reality was what he was trying to achieve, he definitely achieved that by painting all of this in just red and making it look really flat. Like if you just like squint your eyes and forget all the little lines, then you just see just flat surface.
There's no sense of perspective.
Yeah.
Without the added lines, it would almost be as if everything was floating in this one red space.
And we know like linear perspective is such a big thing to Western art and how it grew. So why will Matisse completely abandon linear perspective in this painting?
Well, Matisse really believed that there's no point in a piece which is more important than any other point. There really is no center of focus, which was an idea which emerged during the Impressionist era. This was actually one work of a series. He did another one that is also pretty famous, entitled The Pink Studio.
Yeah, so getting back to the lines, because I'm really bothered by them. He uses this really light, almost unnoticeable white yellow line. It sort of reminds me of something that I did in 3rd grade, when you would do one shade of color and then you would try to outline it to make it stand out from the other color. So it's very amateurish.
It's like he tried to paint this by block, but he forgot to just like paint the chairs and the table and the stools and stuff.
And he decided just to wing it with a white line. So why did he decide to outline it in this way?
Well, I decided to do a technique called the reserve line, which you would think that the white yellow line would be painted on top of the red paint. But actually in this case, the light white color is what is painted directly onto the canvas. And that's allowed to dry, and the red paint is applied on top of that white. And it's just, he applies it in these blocky ways just to define and outline the objects.
Right.
So here we have an artwork from the British artist Francis Bacon, and it's titled Triptych, August 1972.
Is there any special meaning behind the fact that he decided to title it the way he did?
Well, the date is when he painted this, but the significance of this painting is that just a year before that, so in 1971, his lover of almost, let's say, like 9 years, committed suicide. He also did a similar work, so he did a bunch of triptychs in memory of George Dyer, and another one is specifically portraying him in the bathroom in which he committed suicide, and we see some connection between these two paintings. We see the dark room in the back, and we're wondering, like, what is this dark room? And I think in looking at both of these paintings, I think he tried to portray like the dark abyss or the unknown, or something to do with like death, maybe. Death and darkness.
Death and darkness.
Death and darkness.
This is definitely an emotional painting, but why did he choose to do a triptych instead of just like a big canvas?
Yeah, he chose triptych because in a triptych you can separate the three into sections, so there is like a sense of isolation, but also they're connected, like the narrative is the same. And in this one, like the first panel we're looking at George Dyer, the lover, and the third panel we're looking at a self-portrait of Francis Bacon. So he's actually putting himself in this. And we see that they're not looking in the same direction, they're looking away. They're painted in a similar way, but they're not communicating. There's some disconnection between them too. And I think he really achieved that by painting this in a triptych, because it gives that physical separation of the canvases. And in the middle, where their lovers come together, is the focal point, the central point of their union. And I think he carried this theme out in a lot of his works as well. This preoccupation with male nudity and like the violence of homosexuality and their sexual relationship.
Is there a reason why he decided to make incomplete, distorted figures rather than perhaps more full figures or traditional figures?
I think in this painting in particular, he's trying to depict their their relationship and how it came to fall apart. It's their sense of, I mean, they've had this relationship for a while, but it's their individual pain that we're holding on to, their sense of incompleteness, especially in a society where homosexuality was illegal. Until 1967, it was illegal. So it was something like their own identity was oppressed by the society. So they individually hold these kind of like confusion and pain, and even when they come together, they can't really make that up for each other. Like we see that they're making love at the borderline of the darkness and lightness. It's like they're bordering life and death, and there's something about like maybe AIDS related to homosexuality, or just like how like their own relationship was destructive in their own lives, to their own lives. His dad was a big influence on his personal like identity, but he was also a very conservative and very masculine person. Like he used to beat Bacon for being feminine and for being wanting to be an artist. So he eventually got kicked out from his house, and that kind of stuck with him for the rest of his life. And that's the kind of people that he started to look for in lovers, like really masculine. Like his previous lover, Peter Lacey, used to beat him.